Nicki don't need to worry about Don. She need to be with damn Don Lemon, and Nicki Minaj needs to be worried about Chris Hansen. She needs to be worried about.
Yesterday, U.S. Weekly broke the news that Nicki Minaj's house is at risk of being seized due to a lawsuit.
Under Trump's rules, she should be deported because I don't think, reportedly, that she is a legal citizen here. She is undocumented.
The temperature in celebrity culture just spiked to dangerous levels, because this wasn't a clapback, this wasn't shade, and this definitely wasn't entertainment. This was a detonation. A moment so volatile that publicists went silent, fan bases went to war, and one of the loudest voices in comedy allegedly decided he was done biting his tongue. When DL Hughley finally spoke, it wasn't funny, it was furious. What started as a few reckless posts spiraled into a full-blown ideological firestorm involving politics, power, loyalty, money, and reputations that may never recover. Screenshots were flying. Clips were being stitched. Old quotes resurfaced with brutal timing. And suddenly, Nicki Minaj, a woman who built her empire on control and dominance, found herself on the defensive as the narrative slipped through her fingers.
So you can see the protesters here have gathered over here. They're in the middle of the church. During the beginning of the church service, the pastor was speaking, and Nicki stood up and said her piece, and then the protesters surrounded her. But this is a clandestine mission. I think they found out according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE. And so, here we go.
Because this wasn't just about MAGA. It wasn't just about a tweet. It wasn't even just about Don Lemon. According to whispers spreading through industry group chats, this eruption was years in the making. Financial pressure. Legal shadows. Private conversations that were never meant to reach daylight. And now, allegedly, a line had been crossed that couldn't be walked back, one that pushed DL Hughley to say what many were afraid to say out loud. Fans thought they were ready. They weren't. Because once the first clip went viral, insiders claim there were more messages. More context. More motives hiding behind the outrage. And if even half of what's being quietly circulated is true, this isn't just a feud, it's a collapse in progress. And the most explosive detail. The real reason DL went off hasn't even been revealed yet. The moment the clip resurfaced, everything detonated at once. Not gradually. Not politely. It was like someone ripped the pin out of a grenade that had been sitting under celebrity culture for years. One sentence from DL Hughley, delivered with zero humor and maximum venom, turned what looked like another chaotic Nicki Minaj online rant into something far more dangerous.
This is what I'll say to Nicki Minaj. I normally don't respond to things like this, but, F it. I'm going to do it this time. I think Nicki Minaj has made it very clear how she feels about African Americans in this country, or I don't think she's one of them, obviously. And she should, under Trump's rules, she should be deported because I don't think, reportedly, that she is a legal citizen here. She is undocumented. And so she has shown her disdain for African Americans. So why are you supporting her? Why are you buying her records? She's also supporting, I have lots of gay friends who love Nicki Minaj. Why are you supporting this homophobic, bigoted, ignorant?
Because this time, the response didn't come from a stan, a blogger, or a rival rapper. It came from a man who sounded done pretending. And that's what made people stop scrolling. Just hours earlier, Nicki Minaj had once again set social media ablaze, inserting herself into a political and cultural conversation she clearly did not research, and did not hesitate to weaponize. The posts were aggressive. The tone was righteous. The accusations were wild. And the reaction was immediate. Twitter fractured into warring camps. TikTok flooded with stitched reactions. Instagram comment sections turned into digital battlegrounds. But behind the noise, insiders say something else was happening, something much quieter and much more serious. According to multiple industry whispers, DL Hughley had already been warned not to respond. Friends allegedly told him it would only feed the chaos. But that advice came too late. Because once he saw the posts, once he saw the implications, something snapped. And when DL snaps, he doesn't joke. He diagnoses. The first viral clip was only 30 seconds long, but it landed like a hammer. DL didn't argue policy. He didn't debate politics. He went straight for what he called hypocrisy, and he did it with a bluntness that felt surgical. He accused Nicki of aligning herself with people and ideologies that directly contradict the life she has publicly acknowledged living. And then he went further. Much further. Within minutes, blogs were racing to upload longer segments of his radio commentary. In those clips, DL allegedly questioned her sudden political posture, her selective outrage, and her repeated pattern of defending men at the center of serious legal controversies. He didn't mention charts. He didn't mention beef. He mentioned consequences. And that's when the mood shifted from messy to ominous. Because fans realized this wasn't about one tweet. This was about a pattern being called out in real time. Almost instantly. Nicki's fanbase mobilized. They accused DL of clout chasing. Of misogyny. Of disrespect. Hashtags trended demanding apologies. Old stand-up clips were pulled up and dragged. But then something unexpected happened. Neutral observers, people with no loyalty to either side, started agreeing with him. Quietly at first. Then louder. Because DL wasn't speculating. He was connecting dots that had been sitting in plain sight for years. And then Don Lemon re-entered the story. What began as Nicki attacking Don Lemon over coverage of a protest quickly unraveled once people realized she had completely misunderstood the situation. He wasn't advocating. He wasn't provoking. He was reporting. But instead of backing down when corrected, Nicki doubled down, accusing him of disrespect, criminality, and even calling for him to be locked up. That escalation raised eyebrows. That tone raised alarms. DL Hughley didn't let that slide. According to insiders, DL was particularly disturbed by how casually Nicki invoked incarceration, especially given her own past statements about immigration, policing, and state violence. Old tweets resurfaced, where she openly acknowledged coming to the United States undocumented as a child. Those receipts spread fast. Screenshots flew. Context collapsed. And suddenly, the internet wasn't laughing anymore. It was asking questions. Why would someone with that history flirt with rhetoric that has destroyed lives like hers? That's when DL allegedly said the quiet part out loud. In a now viral segment, he suggested Nicki should be more concerned with her own legal proximity than attacking journalists doing their jobs. The phrasing was harsh. The implication was sharper. And while his critics called it cruel, his supporters called it overdue. Because according to them, this wasn't about punishing Nicki, it was about refusing to keep excusing her. Behind the scenes, insiders claim Nicki was spiraling. One source close to the situation alleged that her team begged her to log off. Another claimed she refused, convinced she could outtalk the backlash. A third alleged she believed leaning into MAGA-adjacent spaces would insulate her from criticism and open new revenue streams at a time when financial pressure was tightening. Whether that's true or not, the timing was brutal. Because right as this political firestorm erupted, reports resurfaced about a massive legal settlement tied to her husband, Kenneth Petty. Lawsuits. Alleged incidents overseas. A judgment that nearly cost her a multi-million-dollar home. Fans who had defended her marriage for years suddenly went quiet. Critics didn't. DL Hughley seized on that silence. He didn't just criticize Nicki's politics. He questioned her judgment. Her priorities. Her repeated willingness to stand 10 toes down, as he put it, behind men facing serious accusations, even when doing so cost her money, credibility, and public goodwill. He referenced her past support of family members in criminal cases. He framed it not as loyalty, but as a refusal to draw moral lines. That framing hit harder than any insult, because it suggested something far more damaging than hypocrisy. It suggested recklessness. The internet reacted violently. Nicki's stans flooded DL's mentions with threats and insults. His supporters flooded hers with old receipts. Every interview she'd ever done was suddenly reinterpreted. Every lyric felt suspect. Every political comment felt calculated. And still, she kept posting. Then came the alleged private messages. A gossip account claimed Nicki sent furious DMs to a media personality, accusing them of letting DL disrespect her. Another claimed she demanded a public defense from someone who quietly declined. A third alleged her team reached out to stop a longer DL segment from airing, unsuccessfully. None of this was confirmed. But the rumors alone kept the fire alive. By the end of the day, the narrative had flipped. This was no longer Nicki versus Don Lemon. This was Nicki versus the accumulation of her own choices, and DL Hughley had become the voice saying what others had only whispered. The most unsettling part. He didn't sound angry. He sounded resolved. And according to one final insider leak that dropped just before midnight, DL wasn't done talking. Because what he was allegedly preparing to say next wasn't about politics at all. It was about money. By the time the word money started circulating, the entire tone of the conversation darkened. Because politics can be debated, tweets can be deleted, and feuds can be reframed, but finances don't lie quietly for long. And according to multiple so-called insiders, this was the pressure point that pushed DL Hughley from commentary into full-on confrontation. Late that night, an audio clip allegedly recorded off-air began making the rounds in industry group chats. In it, DL wasn't ranting. He was dissecting. He allegedly said Nicki's recent behavior didn't look ideological, it looked desperate. And when that line leaked, it reframed everything. Suddenly, people weren't just arguing about MAGA rhetoric or Don Lemon anymore. They were asking what was happening behind the scenes that would make someone with Nicki's legacy move this recklessly. Blogs moved fast. Too fast. Within hours, old legal stories resurfaced with new urgency. The near loss of her Hidden Hills home. The last-minute payment that allegedly saved it. The overseas incident tied to Kenneth Petty that resulted in a massive judgment. Commentators started connecting dots they'd ignored before. How many settlements? How many quiet payouts? How many brand deals slowed or vanished while fans were distracted by online beefs? According to one anonymous music executive, this isn't about relevance. It's about liquidity. That quote went viral, and panic followed. Nicki's camp pushed back immediately. Sources close to her claimed she was financially secure, and that rumors of money trouble were exaggerated by haters. But the problem wasn't proof, it was timing. Because every denial landed next to another resurfaced receipt, another report, another reminder that standing behind controversy has a cost. And DL Hughley kept hammering that point without ever naming exact numbers. That restraint made it worse. On his radio show, DL allegedly said, "When you keep defending the indefensible, eventually the bill comes due." Listeners didn't miss the implication. He wasn't talking about politics. He was talking about patterns. And he made it clear he believed Nicki had confused loyalty with self-destruction, and was now lashing out at journalists and activists, because they were safer targets than the truth. That's when Don Lemon reappeared in the chaos. Don didn't escalate. He didn't insult. He simply clarified, calmly, that he had done his job and that Nicki's attack was misinformed. But behind the scenes, insiders claim his response rattled her more than any clapback. Because instead of engaging emotionally, he stepped back and let the facts stand. And in the court of public opinion, restraint often reads as credibility. DL noticed. According to a leaked DM shared by a gossip page, DL privately praised Don for not rolling in the mud. That message, whether real or not, fueled speculation that DL saw himself as saying what Don wouldn't. And once that idea took hold, fans stopped framing this as a feud and started framing it as an intervention, one Nicki refused to hear. The Barbs went into overdrive. Hashtags trended accusing DL of misogyny, ageism, and irrelevance. Clips of his past jokes were pulled out of context and circulated aggressively. Some demanded boycotts. Others threatened sponsors. But the backlash didn't slow him down. If anything, insiders say it emboldened him. Because for the first time, public opinion wasn't clearly on Nicki's side. Then came the alleged meltdown. A late-night post from a verified but vague account claimed Nicki had erupted during a private meeting with her team, accusing them of letting this get out of hand. The post alleged she felt betrayed by people who didn't defend her loudly enough and furious that DL's commentary was being taken seriously. According to the same source, she insisted she could flip the narrative if she leaned harder into the culture war. That decision, if true, may have been the turning point. Because as Nicki's online rhetoric grew sharper, the industry response grew colder. Radio silence from peers. No celebrity cosigns. No public defenses from people who once benefited from her platform. Even collaborators stayed quiet. And silence, in moments like this, feels like abandonment. DL Hughley capitalized on that vacuum. In another segment, he allegedly said, "When everyone who used to ride with you suddenly needs distance, that's not cancel culture, that's accountability." That line was clipped, reposted, remixed, and debated across platforms. For supporters, it was truth-telling. For Nicki's fans, it was unforgivable disrespect. But the most damaging rumor dropped just after midnight. An account known for accurate industry leaks claimed DL was aware of additional financial strain that had not yet gone public, and that he chose his words carefully to avoid legal trouble. According to that post, DL believed Nicki was one bad quarter away from having to reinvent herself completely, and that her sudden alignment with controversial spaces was less about belief and more about survival. No proof. No confirmation. But the rumor stuck. Nicki responded with more posts. More rage. More deflection. She mocked critics. She doubled down on her stance. She framed herself as persecuted. But something had changed. The energy wasn't triumphant anymore, it was frantic. And viewers felt it. Meanwhile, DL stayed calm. He didn't tweet. He didn't argue with fans. He didn't backtrack. That composure made his critics angrier, and his supporters more confident. Because it looked like he knew something, and was waiting. By the end of the second day, the narrative was no longer, DL Hughley attacks Nicki Minaj. It was, DL Hughley exposes the pressure Nicki refuses to address. And that shift was devastating. Because once money enters the conversation, everything else follows. Motives. Alliances. Desperation. And according to one final insider leak that spread quietly, but ominously, DL wasn't finished connecting dots. He was allegedly preparing to talk about loyalty, not political loyalty, but personal loyalty, and how Nicki's definition of it may have cost her more than she realizes. And if that conversation goes public, this won't look like a feud anymore. It'll look like a reckoning. By the third day, the conversation stopped being loud and started being surgical. The screaming matches on Twitter slowed. The reaction videos got quieter. And that's when people who actually move power began paying attention. Because when chaos settles into calculation, that's when real consequences arrive. According to multiple behind-the-scenes whispers, DL Hughley wasn't responding anymore because he didn't need to. His point had landed. The culture had already started reframing the situation without him saying another word. And that silence, it was being interpreted as confidence. Industry insiders began floating the same phrase in different ways. This isn't about MAGA. This is about loyalty without limits. That framing changed everything. Because once people stopped arguing about politics, they started examining behavior. Patterns. Choices that stretched back years. Moments that fans had excused in isolation, but never stacked together. And when stacked, the picture looked far darker than a bad tweet. Commentators began openly questioning why Nicki Minaj consistently positioned herself as the public shield for men facing the most serious allegations, even when doing so cost her money, goodwill, and professional stability. Her husband, her brother, others she's defended aggressively in the past. The question wasn't asked with malice anymore. It was asked with concern. What is she protecting, and why? That's where the alleged private audio entered the conversation. Not a leak. Not a clip. Just descriptions from people claiming to have heard it. According to those accounts, the recording allegedly captures Nicki venting about how everyone expects her to pay the price for decisions made by the men around her. The tone, they say, isn't angry, it's exhausted. And if true, that detail reframes the entire meltdown. Because exhaustion doesn't come from trolling. It comes from pressure. Pressure that has been quietly building. More insiders began speaking anonymously, claiming Nicki's inner circle has shrunk dramatically over the past 2 years. Old allies gone. New voices pushing riskier strategies. People telling her controversy equals engagement, and engagement equals survival. Whether that's accurate or not, the outcome has been the same. Louder moves, harsher rhetoric, fewer safety nets. And then Kenneth Petty was pulled back into focus, again. Legal analysts on YouTube began breaking down the financial implications of his past cases in cold, unemotional terms. Settlements don't disappear. Judgments don't expire quietly. Reputation affects insurability, touring logistics, brand partnerships. Every explanation stripped away emotion and left math behind. And math is unforgiving. DL Hughley never had to say, "This is about your husband." The internet said it for him. What stunned people most was the absence of defense from Nicki's peers. No major artists stepped in to shield her. No industry veterans reframed the narrative in her favor. That absence spoke volumes. Because in celebrity culture, silence is rarely neutral, it's strategic distance. Meanwhile, Don Lemon remained untouched by the chaos. No follow-up rant. No clapback. Just continued work. And that contrast became symbolic. One person escalating. One person moving on. And audiences noticed. Late in the week, a final rumor began circulating, quieter than the others, but heavier. An account known for leaking entertainment law chatter claimed that Nicki had recently been advised to de-risk her public image and reduce unnecessary volatility. According to the Post, the advice was ignored. That single detail hit harder than any insult. Because it suggested this wasn't ignorance, it was defiance. Defiance fueled by fear. By now, even longtime supporters were admitting something felt off. Not in her talent. Not in her legacy. But in her decision-making. People weren't canceling her, they were reassessing her. And reassessment is far more dangerous, because it sticks. D.L. Hughley's earlier words were replayed again, this time without outrage attached. Listeners heard something different now. Not mockery. Not hate. A warning. When you keep confusing loyalty with righteousness, he allegedly said, you end up standing alone, defending things nobody asked you to defend. That line became the unofficial thesis of the entire controversy. Nicki continued posting, but the impact diminished. The likes slowed. The replies shifted. More questions. Fewer cheers. And that change may be the most unsettling development of all. Because artists can survive backlash, but they struggle to survive indifference. As of now, no apology has been issued. No retraction. No reset. Just movement forward through the noise, as if volume alone can drown out consequences. Whether that strategy works remains to be seen. What's clear is this was never about one journalist, one protest, or one political moment. It was about years of choices colliding publicly, all at once. And D.L. Hughley didn't create that collision. He just refused to look away when it happened. And according to the last whisper making the rounds, the next phase won't be loud at all. It won't be tweets. It won't be radio segments. It'll be decisions, quiet ones, made behind closed doors. And those decisions will determine whether this moment fades or becomes the turning point no one can undo. If you're still watching right now, understand this, you're already ahead of the curve. This isn't one of those stories that burns hot and disappears. This is the kind of situation that keeps unfolding quietly, strategically, and without warning. And when the next development drops, it won't come with context or mercy. It'll just hit, and the people who weren't paying attention will be left confused, scrambling to catch up. Do not let that be you. Right now, hitting like isn't just support. It's how you tell the algorithm you want the real stories, not the sanitized versions everyone else gets spoon-fed days later. Dropping a comment matters even more, because the comment section is where the boldest theories surface, where insiders lurk, and where the next clue usually shows up first. If you've got a take, say it now, before the narrative shifts again. And most importantly, subscribe with notifications turned all the way on. Not later. Not after the next headline. Now. Because when this story updates, and it won't wait for you to be ready. The silence you're seeing right now. That's not the end. That's the pause before the next move. In celebrity culture, the loud moments distract you. The quiet moments change everything. Stay locked in. Stay alert. Because once the next decision is made behind closed doors, the fallout will be public, and you don't want to be hearing about it secondhand.